Fritz Lang's 1931 masterpiece M concerns a heated search for a child murderer, conducted simultaneously by the police and the organized criminal underworld. In a story about missing children and an unknown predator nobody can seem to locate, it's often what is absent that is given emphasis. It's what's expected but missing from the frame that informs the viewer's understanding of the story, and this in turn creates greater than usual audience participation, as information not provided requires blanks to be mentally filled in. The motif of absence, of the missing, runs throughout. The movie opens, in fact, on a black screen. We hear a voice before we see anything. It's the voice of a child, singing part of an elimination game with other kids, given perverse emphasis in light of the context of a rash of child abductions. When we learn the story's premise, we witness only peripherally when a child is led by an unseen killer to her doom. When her ball meets his shadow, the actual people are off-screen. The child is the impetus for the ball's motion, and it in turn an indicator of her vitality. But she's taken, and what remains is a mother, plaintively calling out for her child, and we're shown all the empty places she might have been, but isn't. M was Lang's first talking picture, and being one of the giants of cinema, he employed this new tool to maximum effect. The juxtaposition of the sound of the mother's call with the absence of the child creates pathos, as the audience knows what the mother will inevitably learn, that her child is gone for good. In this scene, we go from quiet to near riot, as it begins with an almost abandoned street, which quickly populates when someone thinks they've spotted the child killer.
Aber schnell nach Hause gehen. Wo wohnst du denn, mein Kind?
Was geht denn das Sie an, wo das Kind wohnt?
Bitte?
Was wollen Sie denn von die Kleine?
Gar nichts will ich.
An innocent man becomes the focus of public outcry, as he is perceived to be suspect by virtue of having spoken to a child. The mob closes in, and the previously spacious frame becomes crowded.
Habt ihr mal nicht so? Erst Kinder anquatschen.
Hau noch jetzt in die Schnauze, was hat er gesagt?
Dann auch noch Kästen lernen.
Aber bitte lassen Sie mich doch los. Ich habe das Kind doch gar nicht angesprochen.
Hat wohl die Kleine was schleppen wollen, was?
Ja, und dann umbringen wie die anderen, was?
Was ist das der Mörder? Ich bin Mörder. Halt mich fest. Ruf doch die Polizei.
The interplay of sound and image continues, as Lang presents a sequence in which police prepare to raid a bar known to be frequented by the city's criminals. It's almost entirely silent as anticipation builds, and even the sounds you would normally expect to hear are muted to suggest stealth. This provides a more effective contrast when the chaos of noise suddenly bursts out, when the police descend on the nefarious den. Lang will employ this device again when the killer is being pursued by homeless men tasked to find and follow him. The whistles of his pursuers ring out the more sharply without ambient noise to dampen them, and the overall impression is heightened as a result. As he flees, finding himself boxed in at every turn, there's very little sound. This enhances again the audience's anticipation for the conflict to come.
Dankeschön.
When considering how the criminals would discover the killer in the first place, Lang and his writer, longtime collaborator and wife, Theo von Harbu, decided to have a sightless street vendor recognize him by the tune he whistles when on the prowl.
Das war doch.
Again, we get the collective use of image and sound to generate effects and to move the story forward. Lang is making full use of the tools available to him.
Was hast du denn? Na, hör doch mal. Da pfeift doch einer. Na, hörst du denn nicht? Da.
When the child killer, played strikingly by Peter Lorre, withdraws into an office building to hide, the sequence that follows is one of the film's most effective.
Ist da noch wer?
Where previously the general sounds of the street were muted, here we can hear even the labored breathing of the murderer, insight into his state of nervous apprehension. The criminal fraternity gathered to hunt him down, and as break-in artists and safecrackers, lockpicks, and otherwise skilled thieves, they proceed to break into the building as though executing a high-stakes heist. Key to their success is not alerting police to their activities, and so they attempt the break-in silence. The tension generated by this, and the impact of even the slightest sound to alarm both the concealed killer and the audience, is terrific. We find ourselves nervous on behalf both of the criminals, fearful they may make too much noise, and of the killer, afraid he will give himself away. The situation is so universally understood as a cause for anxiety that we forget that we are presumably not on their side.
So, ab dafür.
Visual and auditory absences give way to metaphorical ones towards the movie's close. The accused killer defends himself before the criminals, who've organized a kind of trial to determine his fate.
Du hast da was von Recht gesprochen. Dir soll dein Recht werden. Hier sitzen lauter Sachverständige in Rechtsfragen.
In a pitiful scene, he makes the argument that while he is compelled to commit his crimes by a madness he can't control, they have chosen their odious natures. As such, they are lacking in the compassion and shame he desperately needs them to have if he's to hope they won't kill him, following the sham exercise of a phony trial.
Ganz sicher unschädlich bist du nur, wenn du tot bist.
Aber ihr könnt doch nicht einen nackten Mord an mir begehen! Ich verlange, dass man mich zur Polizei ausliefert! Ich verlange, dass man mich vor ein ordentliches Gericht stellt!
The movie closes on the cries of mothers, bemoaning the lack of justice for their children, a bookend to the child singing at the opening of the story.
Man muss eben noch besser auf die Kinder Acht geben. Ihr.
These and other moments of the film demonstrate Lang's mastery of the medium. He employed the new tool of sound not only to convey information, as many did, but he understood how to combine sound with image to create dramatic effect. He knew that withholding it could be an effective way to engage the audience and play upon their expectations to read significance into the silence. He uses sound to propel the story, in fact in this case making the whistling of the killer the crux of the plot that brings about his downfall. Lang shows us also that what is shown, or what sounds heard, can be more effective when contrasted with what is not.